Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts, with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing's available. Welcome back to Southern Ghost Stories. I am the American Haunted Historian, Alan Searcy. So hey, I'm glad you guys are with me today. And right from the jump here, I want to tell you guys, back in December, I started taking the show to Tuesdays and Fridays. In the past couple of weeks, I've been doing Wednesdays and Fridays. Just it's hard for me to record earlier in the week, so I have pushed it back to Wednesday. So if you see that, it's kind of a hiccup. But going forward, I'll be doing Wednesday and Friday shows. But yeah, so hey, the spring's coming up. I got lots of shows coming up. I'll be in Cincinnati here in a couple weeks. Horror Hound, be signing books. That's going to be a big show. I told you guys Matthew Lillard, Skeet Ulrich are going to be there. A bunch of other big names from horror. Also, my new book comes out April 30th. Pistols, Red River. It's the Andrew Jackson dueling story. But actually, it's 2 for 1. There's 2 duels that took place. There's one duel that kind of, as we're leading up to the first duel, there's a second duel. So yeah, it's a fun book. Lots of weird, wild history. I mean, the book is like, it's historical fiction technically, but like 95% of it is like what really happened. It's so wild I had to tell the tale. So, but anyway, check that out April 30th. And this is actually the 120th anniversary of the Jackson duel on the Red River, which is right there at the border of Kentucky and Tennessee. Fun little tidbit. James Robertson, the founder of Nashville, met with Jackson and forbid him from actually dueling in city limits. So that's why they went up to the Red River. Dueling was illegal in Tennessee. But I guess Kentucky is kind of the Wild West and whatever goes on. So I've been teasing it for a while. And this week I'm finally going to do it. Going to do a Q&A. You guys have been sending me questions. And if you haven't done so, you can still do it. I've told you guys, find Southern Ghost Stories on Facebook or on Instagram. And send me a message. I love interacting with you guys, and the questions are fun. And the thing is, like, I can't see the forest for the trees sometimes. I have so many books, I don't think about some of the stories because I have so many things to pull from. I think I told on another show, I did an interview in Kentucky. I was on a TV show in Lexington, and this guy starts asking me a question, and I start trailing off into a story about something that happened in Fitchurst County, Tennessee 200 years ago. So yeah, there's so much stuff in my brain. So yeah, send me some questions that I can kind of get my thoughts together, and I can answer coherently and give you guys some fun stories. So you're Jared Murphy. He's the first one. He sent me a message back in December. How come you never do anything on Indiana? Well, Jared, that's a good question. I have some notes for an Indiana book. I've dug around. I have friends in Evansville, and I've been up to New Albany. I've been to South Bend for a football game. There's a lot of history in Indiana. So one of my favorite stories, and it's in South Indiana, like literally right across the river from Louisville, right from Kentucky there, the Culbertson Mansion in New Albany, big, beautiful home, has 26 rooms, huge, sprawling mansion. Well, William Culbertson, he was the richest man in Indiana. He sold cotton as well as wholesale goods as far north as Pennsylvania and as far south as Louisiana. He was a very wealthy man. His second wife, and one of his daughters actually died in the Culbertson Mansion there in New Albany. But they say that Cordelia, his wife, she's actually supposedly still there haunting the old mansion. And one of the strangest stories I heard, it pertains to some helium balloons that someone brought to the house. And while they were there, they accidentally let them go on the first floor. So the balloons floated to the top of a 16-foot high ceiling, and the staff member was about to leave for the day, and she saw him, like, I'll get him tomorrow. I ain't got time to fool with this. So they were in a hurry to wrap things up and get home, and figured it wouldn't be a problem. Well, she's going to get him the next morning. Well, those balloons, the lady went home, she went to bed, and she had a pounding on the front door. The police had been called. They had to come get her. There was a motion detector went off in the house. Well, the staff member, she accompanied the police back to the mansion. They went from room to room, the first floor, didn't find anything. Went upstairs, and they couldn't believe it. As those balloons, they had traveled from the first floor up the stairs to the second floor, made a left-hand turn, went down a 25-foot hallway, dipped down to enter a 10-foot doorway, then went approximately 15 feet where the balloons attached themselves to a dress worn by Aunt Culbertson, who is one of William Culbertson's daughters. So, yeah, it's a big, beautiful house. I think they still do tours there. Yeah, and I had a caretaker actually reach out to me a while back. I need to get back with her, but yeah, Indiana's on the docket. It's on the back burner. I've told you guys. I've got a back burner mile long. I have so many stories, and a weird thing happens. You start writing ghost stories because I do events. I told you guys I'll be in Cincinnati. I'm going to be in Louisville. I'm going to be in Nashville and Knoxville. I got a lot of shows lined up this year, and at those shows, people come up to me and tell me their ghost stories. So I'll get up my phone, my notepad, my iPhone, and I'll make notes and dig in when I can. And I've got a bunch of stuff for Indiana. I got to find time to really get on it. I think you guys know I have a little boy, and it's hard to break away from him for a weekend to go research ghost stories in Indiana. So anyway, it's on the docket, and I may get to another day. But there's a ghost story in South Bend on the campus of Notre Dame. Washington Hall is where a football player named George Gipper died from pneumonia at the age of 25 in 1920. You may have heard the phrase, win one for the Gipper, that football coach Newt Rockne told his team before they upset Army. So Gip played football under that legendary coach, and since Gip died there at Washington Hall, people have heard strange noises, footsteps in the building. Someone said they heard a tuba playing by itself one night, which is really strange. But they all attribute it to the former football player who died there in Washington Hall. There are stories in Indiana. I've really got to go dig into them, so more on that later. Alice Barr sent me a question. This is a fun one. She wanted to know what's the creepiest place I've been in. I've been doing these books in the podcast for a while, and I've been a lot of just eerie, creepy places. Top of my head, the underground tunnels in Murfreesboro, Tennessee were pretty creepy. I may have talked about on the show. I do it when I do tours in Middle Tennessee. There are tunnels under Murfreesboro, Gallatin, Springfield, Franklin, Nashville. All these big cities, Middle Tennessee, had tunnels under them. So I got to go tour the tunnels in Murfreesboro. I had a deputy from the sheriff's department accompany me. And it's just dark, eerie, real musty smelling. It's creepy. But honestly, I think that was eerie, but creepy, I would say probably Waverly Hills Sanitarium. Have you guys been out in the death chute? With no lights, it's pitch black down there, and it's eerie. That's where they, Waverly Hills Sanitarium, it was an old tuberculosis hospital. And, if you went there, chances are you aren't coming back. Tuberculosis was pretty much a death sentence. So you have thousands of people going in for treatment, and very few leave. So to keep morale up, when somebody passed away there in the sanitarium, they didn't take them out the front door. They took them out the back, which is the death chute. It goes to the back of the building, it goes kind of under the property, and it's, just knowing, that thousands of dead people took that chute down. I've heard estimates, was it 1,500 or 2,000 people died there in that building. So, it's a lot of death in that one place, and they all passed through there on their way out. While I was there on that tour, I remember there was a girl who told me she was touched by something in the death tunnel. Nothing touched me, but I did see something very strange in one of the rooms in broad daylight. I've talked about that on other shows. I may talk about it again. I probably need to do a Waverly Hills Sanitarium show, because that's, if you watch the Travel Channel and all those ghost hunting shows, that's supposedly the most haunted place in America. It's really subjective, but, like I said, a lot of folks died there, and there's lots of stories from Waverly Hills Sanitarium. But it's a cool place, and I think you can rent it out for overnight investigations. You can take tours during the day. So, if you're around Louisville or you can get to it, go take a tour. It's a great place for ghost hunting. Let's see here. I got another question from Lindy Freeman. Have you ever thought about doing one of those ghost hunting shows or starting one? It's an interesting question. I was in a historic site. This is, 2020, 2021. I can't remember the date. It was a while back. And I was in this site with this known paranormal investigator who'd been on TV. And we went to the second floor where there was supposedly some paranormal activity. And he had a spirit box. And he was doing a session where he was recording himself speaking, and then the spirit box was supposedly answering him. we're up there, and he's just talking away, and the spirit box, and of course, like the science behind it. A spirit box kind of scans the radio waves, and you get a lot of static, but sometimes you will hear words. Could it be from a radio station? Could it be from whatever's they're trying to communicate? I don't know. It's all subjective or whatever you believe in. But we were up there, the second floor of this historic site, and I just hear a bunch of static. And the guy said, "Oh, it said my name. It's talking to me." So he stops his recording, rewinds it, and plays it, and all you hear is static. He's like, "Did you hear it? You heard my name." I was like, "Man, I don't know. I didn't really hear that." So he does it again, and he asks a question. I forgot the question he asked, but he supposedly it said something like, I forgot what it said, but he played it back again, and all I'm hearing is static. And he's like, "Oh, it's talking to us. It's communicating." I heard nothing. He swore it was there. Well, a few months later, I was in another historic site talking to someone who had been involved in television and knew the investigator. He said that the ghost hunting TV shows, they're not rigged, but the personalities on the shows sometimes are directed by producers to react in an over-top fashion at the slightest sound because it's entertainment, really. And, I've hosted paranormal investigations at historic sites. I've done them at Rosemont, done them at Trousdale Place in Gallatin, Tennessee, at the Lotes House in Franklin. And the thing is, you're there for, 4, 5, 6 hours, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. And you have people who have paid money to be there. And investigating can be boring. There's some you just don't get nothing. I've been on investigations for several hours, didn't get a single bit of evidence. But I've been places where I wasn't even trying and the place comes alive. So that guy, I think he was trying to entertain me and the people who were there. But I don't know. I call balls and strikes. I've been in places where things go bananas, and I've been in places where it's just boring, and I feel bad for people who paid money to be there. But I'm a historian at heart. So to make a short story long, no, I don't plan on doing any ghost hunting TV shows. But I have had some talks with producers from television, and something might happen, and you might see me on a documentary one day or something like that. But I like being behind the scenes. I've got a face for radio. I'm not the star of the show, but I do enjoy telling stories and explaining history and, all the weird, wild stuff I've come across in my research. Let's see here. Next question. Here's one from Brenda Stanfield. This is a fun one. She says her golden retriever passed away last November, but she says that in the morning, before she gets out of bed, she can hear his paws going click-clack on the hardwood floor by the back door like he wants to go outside. Do you think animals can sense ghosts? Do you believe in animal spirits? Yeah. I've never experienced that, but I've talked to several people who have. I remember there was a place in Franklin, Tennessee. I was researching my Franklin book, Southern Ghost Stories, Franklin, Tennessee. And there was a lady who said that she's heard a dog. I've been in places where they say there's a cat. They felt a cat rubbing their leg. There's a place in Gallatin, Tennessee, where a guy tells me that it's a music store downstairs. It's an old building on the Gallatin Square. He owns a music store downstairs, and upstairs is where he lives. It's an apartment. So he said he takes his dog downstairs, and his dog will stop and start barking at one spot downstairs. And that evening he goes upstairs, and the dog will bark at that one same spot. So is there something there? I don't really know, but animals are sensitive. Children are sensitive. And I've been asked about this. Children seem to be very sensitive to things. Like I say, imaginary friends can be spirits. I was talking to someone a while back about children and ghosts and, kids and how receptive they are. And I kind of attribute to this. So when I go to my sister-in-law's house, I have a niece and nephew. They're 11, 9, and I got one who's a little niece that's 3. When they were a little bit smaller, they're a whole lot more fun, but I still love them dearly. So when I would go see them, I would open the door, I'd say hi to my sister-in-law, but I would just rush, and we'd flip and flop, and we'd have WrestleMania there in the living room, just play with them because they're so much fun. And I think it's kind of like in the spirit world, it's the same thing. If a ghost came to my house, I'm boring. I'm an old fogey. But my little boy, he's a ball of fun. So maybe the spirits they tap into that, the childlike innocence and just the fun, and they can communicate with them. And I don't know. I don't know how it all works, but that kind of makes the most sense to me. It's my theory on the thing. So anyway, next question. Jay Goldblum sent me a message on Instagram and asked if I knew any good Las Vegas ghost stories. I should write a book about Las Vegas. And, I've been to Vegas. I've tried to do some research there. And the problem with Las Vegas is there's not much history to draw from out there. There's history, but in places like Philadelphia, New York, Savannah, Georgia, those places are really old. And there's plenty of history from the 18th century to draw from. All on up to 2026. There's just wild stuff there. Well, Las Vegas didn't really get going until the 1950s or 60s. But, there are some stories. There's just not enough for me to really do a book right now. Maybe one day. Luxor, they say that's the most haunted place to stay on the Vegas Strip. And it's been rumored that the Luxor was built on top of an old mafia burying ground. Because you got to think back in the 60s and 70s, that part of Las Vegas Boulevard where Luxor sits, it was just another part of the desert where, the guys in the mob would dump their remains of people who crossed them or owed them a bunch of money. Luxor, it cost $375 million to build, and crews constantly ran into problems during construction. In fact, some locals believe the project was cursed and that it's due to bad luck or maybe bad design. They said that 3 construction workers died there while it was being built, just in freak accidents there on the construction site. According to the lore or whatever, they say that 2 sphinx are needed for a pyramid. And everyone knows you can't just have 1 sphinx on a pyramid guarded by a giant mythical stone creature. But they say that this, Luxor is designed, it's like a big black pyramid. And according to legend, it's believed the pyramids in Egypt required a sphinx be facing both directions, so the pyramid was protected from evil on both sides. Well, the sphinx at the Luxor is facing to the east, which leaves the west side vulnerable to evil, malevolent spirits. There's also a theory that the shape of the giant black pyramid attracts dark energy. I don't know. Despite all the food, fun, and entertainment, there's been a lot of tragedy there on that resort. Suicides happen very often. Of course, people, they go, it's kind of like that movie Leaving Las Vegas. They go, they down on their luck, they want to drink themselves to death and blow all their money, and then whatever they want to do, they take those guys out the back. It's kind of, they don't really talk about it, but you can go on forums and stuff and read about the stuff that happens in Las Vegas. Lots of folks die in those casinos, and they take their bodies out back so you don't see them going through the front. I guess very similar to what I was talking about earlier with the Waverly Hills Sanitarium. The most notorious ghost story, it dates back to September 1996. There was a prostitute who, she worked the strip there, and she had recently tested positive for HIV. Well, she was seen sitting on the railing on the 26th floor. Guest walked over and tried to talk her out of jumping, but, I guess the weight of the disease was just too much for her to bear. She closed her eyes and jumped. She fell 250 feet into the entrance of the buffet area. And they say a few years later, another lady jumped to her death from the 10th floor in the middle of the afternoon. And you can imagine the people checking in and turn around, boom, there's a lady falling and blood splattered all over their suitcases. They say the 12th, 13th, and 14th floor there at Luxor are supposedly the most haunted places of Luxor. Guests and hotel staff, they've seen the apparition of a woman from time to time just roaming the hallways. Sometimes she'll make her way into the rooms. People have stayed in the hotel, have heard footsteps, and like a wailing in some of the rooms at night. On occasion, she's taking things from suitcases, moving them around. But there's all kinds of ghost stories in Vegas. Just not enough for me to really dig in and write a whole 200, 300-page book. Tropicana, I've heard stories about it. And I guess, it's right across the street from Luxor, or it was. He just tore it down. Remember the mafia burying ground I was telling you guys about? Tropicana it's right across the street. So that was the same part in the boulevard. That's where the mob guys would bury the bodies. Well, according to legend, when they built the Tropicana, they found bodies there and dug them all up. But I told you guys the casino's been torn down. They're actually going to put the new Oakland Athletics, or I guess the Vegas Athletics baseball stadium there on site. So it makes me kind of wonder, I wonder if the A's are going to be cursed, kind of like the Luxor is. But anyway, see here. One more question here. Patrick McDaniel sent me a message. He wanted to know why I hadn't read a book on the Bell Witch. And, I guess it's a good question. The thing is, if you're from Middle Tennessee, the Bell Witch is like the thing out here. It's like if you grew up in New Jersey, it's a Jersey Devil. It's kind of like the big folklore thing in Middle Tennessee. I remember going to summer camp when I was a kid, and like the Bell Witch Cave is in Adams, Tennessee, which is maybe 20, 25, 30 miles from Nashville. And I grew up in Antioch on the southeast side of Nashville. And that summer camp, I remember kids saying, if you go to the bathroom, you turn the lights out, you hold a candle, and you have to say, I don't believe in the Bell Witch 3 times, and turn around 3 different times, she'll appear in front of you in the mirror. Like, I wouldn't do it. I was scared to death. I was just a kid. And other kids were scared to do it, but that was the thing. We'd be dared to do it, and I never would because I was a big chicken. But they say if you go to the Bell Witch Cave, you take a rock, you're going to be cursed. And the thing is, I didn't want to write about it. I've written all these books, and it's a story of a tale that just became a legend over the years. But, I do shows all over Tennessee, Knoxville, Nashville, everywhere in between, Franklin, Gallatin, Murfreesboro. People keep asking me, hey, you got anything on the Bell Witch? So I had like a stash of ghost stories. I kind of just stuck away because when I first started doing this, I wrote books about just towns in Middle Tennessee, Franklin, Gallatin, Murfreesboro. I had 4 books on Nashville. Like Nashville, Middle Tennessee was kind of like my thing until I started branching out. But I had stories from Rippavilla and Spring Hill, which is south of Nashville. The Bridal House in Cottontown, north part of Nashville. Lady of Sadie Baker in Manchester, which is, I guess, to the east of Nashville, past Murfreesboro. So I started thinking, I could do something with all these small town legends. So I decided, I could do the Bell Witch story and mix it in, and call the book Tennessee Tales. But the thing is, I didn't want... The Bell Witch has been done so many times. There's lots of people who've done stuff with the Bell Witch. I wanted it to be different. So there's this legend that Andrew Jackson, you guys know I'm a big fan of Andrew Jackson. Not really a fan, but I think he's a wild, fascinating guy. They say that he went to see if the Bell Witch was a thing. So I knew a guy who worked at the Hermitage, and I asked him, I said, hey, I'm working on this thing with the Bell Witch, and I want to know, is it true? Did Jackson go see the Bell Witch? And he's like, well, I can't tell you he did, but I can't tell you he didn't. The farm was owned by John Bell. John Bell was a senator. He ran for president. He was a Jacksonian Democrat. We know Andrew Jackson went to his farm on this occasion, this occasion, this occasion. Did he go because of the witch? Did he go to visit his friend? I don't know. He was there on these 3 dates. That's all I can tell you. So, I can work with that. And the story is Jackson went out there. He rode his wagon down the trail to Senator Bell's house, and the wagon just got stuck. The horse just stopped moving. His servants got out, started pushing the horse. The horse wouldn't budge. The wheel wasn't stuck in the mud. It just would not move. So Jackson started cursing the Bell Witch, and finally this woman's voice was heard, and it said, you may go now, General, and the wagon started rolling. So that's the story, and they say that Jackson went home that night. He didn't want to stay at Senator Bell's house. But anyway, yeah, Bell Witch Cave, it's open. You can go there, and you can tour it. Just don't take a rock. They say if you take a rock, it'll supposedly, you'll be cursed for the rest of your life till you bring it back. I've heard from dozens of people, like they didn't take a rock, they knew someone who did, and they got in a car wreck, or their wife left them, just bad things happen. So that's kind of the story about the Bell Witch. Take that with what you will, just don't take a rock. But anyway, yeah, I had fun with this Q&A, and keep sending me some more questions. I got a few more I'll get to at a later date. But yeah, hey, if you enjoy the show, please go to, was it iTunes or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you find the show, leave us a review. Please send me some more questions. I enjoy this Q&A, the back and forth, and I plan on doing another one here in a few more weeks. I told you guys I have more questions lined up, but yeah, and check out the books. I've got books. You go to Amazon, you type in Southern Ghost Stories or Alan Searcy, they'll all pop up. I've got stuff from New Orleans to New Jersey, everywhere in between. Got the new book, Pistols at Red River. Really excited about that, but also Hexed. I've got the Weird Wild Voodoo story. So you just go to Amazon, check those out, and leave us a review, and I'll see you guys here in a couple more days.